They say kids don't come with instruction manuals, but this is kind of like an
Right.
instruction manual.
I always give the parents that stat because they're like, I have to be good 100% of the time. I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't.
And I want the best for my child. I want to connect with them, but I'm doing the best that I can. I just feel that I'm on empty.
And in those difficult moments, that's when our children learn who we truly are.
Your kids do their own laundry? Tell me more. Teach me your ways. My goodness. I have 4 kids at home. That's a lot of laundry.
We are looking at it with an adult brain. And that is, therein lies the problem, is we've got kiddos who have a very limited toolkit and a very underdeveloped brain. I don't think we would be okay with this within adult relationships if we did this sort of thing.
No,
Right.
I wouldn't. I would leave Brian in a heartbeat if he did that to me.
Oldish, the show where age-old questions meet new-age answers. With your hosts, Randy Spelling, Brian Austin Green, and Sharna Burgess.
From the Institute of Child Psychology, Tammy and Tania, welcome to Oldish.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we're
Word.
so excited to have you guys. So just for our Oldish friends and family and listeners, the way that this came about is I've been a massive fan of you guys. I found you on Instagram and I got thrown into motherhood about 4 years ago, and deeply when I had my own biological baby 2 years ago. And truly, your page just came as a gift from the universe with these sweet nuggets of information that was like, oh, that makes sense to me. Let me try that out. And these little moments and things that I would try that have just given me such a better understanding of how to be a good parent, and that I'm not alone in my worries and the things, or not to feel bad about the things that I feel, all of that you serve. So thank you so much. And also thank you so much for being here with us today.
So welcome.
Randy, you are new to knowing about Tammy and Tania, right?
I am new. I'm so thankful, though, that I am new to you and now not new. I got to discover your work, and I was on the plane going through all of the Instagram posts and looking at your book and your work, and there's so much. I mean, there's so
many ways we could go here. Yeah.
questions that I have personally. I think that you have. One of the places I wanted to start is to lead us off here. What would be the one thing you see right now where, as parents, we seem to be missing our children?
Well, I think for me, and then Tim, you can jump in afterwards. I think for me, the biggest thing that I tend to see with parents at the moment is that there seems to be often a very strong focus on behavior without looking underneath to actually figure out what's happening for our children.
No, so what do you mean by that? So you see behaviors coming from a child, and parents are reacting to those behaviors without understanding what the root cause of those behaviors is?
I think if you look at it, when we look at our kiddos, we are looking at it with an adult brain. And that is, therein lies the problem, is we've got kiddos who have a very limited toolkit and a very underdeveloped brain. And often the reason for misbehavior, while the brain is complicated, the reasons aren't that complicated, but we miss it. We label it as like they have no boundaries, or they're copying behavior, or they just need to be put in their place, or they need to learn to self-soothe, or like we get all this like information about these reasons. And ultimately, a lot of the times it's like kids are being manipulative. They are learning these behaviors from other people. We need to like show them who's boss. We need to set up a rewards chart. And when we understand how the brain works, it's much more simple than that. Children, ultimately, it's misbehavior usually comes from a source and sense of disconnection from their parents, feeling disconnected or feeling really unsafe. And unsafe, I don't mean like a parent's beating the child. Like I mean unsafe, meaning their bodies don't feel safe. They feel really overwhelmed. And that comes out, and kids don't have the way to communicate that I don't feel safe right now. Like, I've had a lot of transitions and I don't understand. And there's so many lights and so many sounds, and there's a screen in front of me, and their whole body is so frazzled that it comes out as like a tantrum or tattling on their sister, or just a meltdown and saying like, you're the worst mom in the world. When really what it's communicating is, I don't feel safe right now. And I don't know how else to communicate this to you, mom and dad. Like, I don't feel good in my body. And I'm trying to tell you the best way I know how, with the limited toolkit that I have, that I don't feel right. Something doesn't feel right to me.
And so it sounds like the age range of what you're talking about here is not just like littles that can't communicate. It's puberty, it's teenagers, it's all kids that are in our home with their parents that don't know how to communicate these things.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And I think, what so often happens is that we come from a parenting style that we may have had when we were growing up, where it's like, okay, this child needs a timeout, so I need to be very stern. I need to put these limits in. And we're not saying no limits. It's the way you put limits in. But really what we see is that very often when we come in hard to our kids, they comply because they're scared, or they want to get out of their timeout, or they want their iPad back. So they do what they need to do. But we haven't actually got underneath and really helped them with what's going on.
Okay, so let's play this scenario out. Let's say that I'm a parent and my child is acting out in some way, right? They're having a response, a reaction. And because of my parenting style, or because I'm frustrated, I might not know exactly what to do. So I go to a default of sit in the timeout chair for 5 minutes. What then? What can I do instead to not do that? What does that look like?
I think with this is understanding that in order for a child to take the lead of the parent, and we want to keep that lead. Trust me, when you get to the teenage years, you want the freaking lead. Like, you want to keep the lead. So it doesn't mean you can't set limits, but we're saying like children's brains, most misbehavior is caused from dysregulation, meaning their brain, like the thinking part is offline. It's the best way to put it. So they're governed by their emotions and like their bodily responses. So we come in and are like, okay, like I need to be the thinking brain for my child, because they are completely governed by what's going on in their body and what is going on in their emotions. And so for me to take the leadership role, I first have to start to tame the brain. And the only way to do that is through connection first, and something called co-regulation, where our nervous system meets their nervous system and says, okay, I am safe to you. The sky isn't falling. Like, you can rest with me until your body feels safe again, until your emotions come down. And then when like the dust settles as parents, then we discipline. Like, that is when the rest of the stuff comes. But first, we need a calm body and a connected heart before we're ready to discipline. And I think we put the cart before the horse. We jump in with discipline, and then we want to connect later. I'm like, no, we connect first, we discipline after. And that's actually really the heart of discipline is through, we have to have their heart. And our nervous system hopefully is calm, and then they stay with us, and then we can deal with what just happened and teach them maybe some new way to behave. But you can't teach a child a new way to behave if that thinking brain's offline. Like, if their body and emotions have hijacked their behavioral system. You can't, their brain will not take in any more information. You can't teach them anything.
Yeah, my golden rule there, actually. So, I mean, the question there too is like, so you're used to jumping in to go sit in a timeout in the corner, whatever it may be. My go-to is always in those moments, because I have 2 little girls, to remind myself, Tania, speak less, speak less, speak less. So they start pulling at a toy, one screams at the other, and that's always when I go, okay, this is your time, Tania, not to say too much. Because it's often when we say too much that we fall into patterns.
I absolutely say too much. It's so interesting what you say, that like connect first and discipline later, because I certainly didn't grow up with that. I think this is... I think any of our generations before now, I don't know that anyone grew up with that, but I love the approach. And at the same time, it's like, man, you have this emotional reaction to something, especially if that something scares you, of what you're seeing your kids do. And your initial reaction is to scare them enough to not do it again, like, to yell at them. And I definitely am not a parent that yells, but I am reactive when things happen, and I want to deal with it then and there. But I would love to put in the practice of connect now, hug, regulate, and then let's talk about what happened and talk about consequences. I really want to try that.
Yeah, I love that, looking at it like that connect now and then consequence later. Because so sort of even with adults, when you fight, it's like if you're just gonna say, okay, I'm done, in that moment you're being reactive versus saying, okay, let me take a breather, let me regulate myself because I'm dysregulated. Then when I'm regulated, then I can sit and ask for what I want or what I need or what
Have a
was
better
missed.
conversation.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you can't, like, think of siblings. Okay, I've got 3 at home, and Tanya's got 2, and so it's like you got 4 or 5 at home. Like, that doesn't mean, like, sometimes we do have to set limits if it's about safety. Like, don't think it's like I let my kids run across like a busy street. Like, I grab their hands. Like, of course we like physically keep them safe, or if they're hitting each other, like we separate them. But the idea is that we can't show them, you can't consequence, or you can't teach them how to, whatever, use their words, or this is how we share, or whatever it is you're trying to teach them to do, until that they feel felt and seen by you, and their body starts to calm, and they're like, hey, there's no fire, like I can relax into mom or dad. And then they're like in this receptive mode that you can influence the behavior. But otherwise, if we just scream or we just dish out consequences, they start to, either they live in fear of us, which is not a good way to learn. And many of us know that. And I was, screamed at, I was spanked as a kid. Like, we don't learn how to behave differently. We just learn how to avoid and get really good at lying and being sneaky so we don't get yelled at. Right? We're not actually, like, we're not motivated to do better. We're just motivated not to get caught.
100%.
Right,
And I was so good at not getting caught as a kid.
But I think this is what's tricky too, right? Because what I hear from parents a lot is they're like, I don't want to yell because, my parents yelled and that didn't feel good. I don't want to yell. But when I get to that point and I need them to behave or I need them to be quiet and I get angry, it works. And I think what you're saying is it doesn't really work long term. It's working to have them comply. It's working to make them afraid. So what do you say to someone who says, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it works?
Yeah, my kids listen.
Right. My kids listen at that moment.
And it's interesting. So we get that from people about yelling. We also get that about spanking. We also get, oh, I was spanked and I turned out fine. And then the question always is, well, did you
I
really?
hate that statement, by the way. I had it, I'm okay. Like, well, it could be
Right.
better, right? Sorry.
Yeah. So, I think when people say that, it's particularly with yelling, my response to that always is that yelling is a reaction. It's not a response. So yelling is, oh, mom or dad are in their stress response too. I'm in a stress response. They can't keep me safe. They're not my anchor. And in those difficult moments, that's when our children learn who we truly are. So I want to remind myself, Tania, don't yell, breathe, 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 be the anchor, because that's who I want to be for my girls.
And we teach kids to only respond to us when we yell, if that is like our default setting. Like, if we go and we're like, we're quiet, or we do this, or we're negotiating, we're bargaining, and then yelling is kind of like step 3, kids wait for step 3. They're like, I know mom's not serious until she yells. Like, we've trained our kids that way. Like, you got to think about that. But if that's the way we've done things, they know we're not serious until we yell. The question is, can we get that connection sooner and figure out why they're not responding within the first time we ask, or the second time we ask? And often it's such simple things. Like, you want to get your kids to come up for dinner, and instead of going downstairs, getting their eyes, getting a smile, kind of saying, hey, like, dinner's ready, come upstairs, and like kind of collecting them and moving upstairs, we yell from the top of the stairs, and they're playing and doing their thing. And so, we don't actually have their attention, and they have very small attention spans. Like, we've sabotaged the getting their attention in the first place by not connecting with their attachment systems and using like our physical, connection to move them. And then we're like, well, I had to yell. I was like, or we could have walked down the stairs and got and connected with them, and they're more compliant then because they feel seen. You gave them a smile and up they go. And I know this because I'm thinking as a parent, that's one of the number one things my husband and I have learned is something as simple as getting our kids to move requires us to physically go downstairs and move them. Like, not pick them up, but just connect with them and then ask them. And we save ourselves tons of arguments this way. But I think as parents, we just get, like, we're busy and we forget these like little micro moments of like, we do better when we feel seen. And then we move.
This is such a great note for me, because with 4 kids in our house, sometimes it's chaotic and you just yell for one, like, where you at? The food's on the table. Like, it's just the easiest way to wrangle people. But I so feel you in that the response is to just, I'm yelling for them and they're in the middle of something, and that is a missed moment of connection. I am now very present to that. I have to be better about that. That's great.
Yeah, I do too. I forget sometimes and I will yell, and then I remember, oh, wait, I need to go look at them in the eye.
Right.
And the cleanup time, because I know this is a big one for parents too. It's like, why can't you just put your stuff away? Your jacket, why is it on the floor and not hung up? The shoes, I've asked you a million times. This is something, we say every day. What is in the children's mind or mindset where for them, even though they understand the shoes go where they're supposed to go or the jacket gets hung up, why when they come in the door and they get plopped right there, what's happening for them?
I think for children, let's say they come in the door and they plop things and we're like, I've told you a million times, what's going on here? It's a little bit of what Tammy's saying here too, is I think for kids, they get home and they're like, oh, I want to play, or I want to do this, or I want a snack. They're moving on to the next thing really quickly. And so I find that often physical presence helps with limits. So it's meeting them at the door and saying, okay, remember, what do we need to do next? And then they actually do it. But very often I find that parents give up a little bit and they're like, oh, it's not worth the fight. And they end up doing it for them. So there's no consistency. But I find with kids, when we put those consistent limits in place, that this needs to happen before you use your tech, before you go and play, that eventually it just becomes habit, just like us. If somebody lets me off the hook often enough, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Tania, I'm glad you brought this up, because speaking of consequences, and I saw a post that you both had that said that punishments don't really work. Punishments, threats, but natural consequences, appropriate consequences do. Can you explain a little bit about that and tell us what a appropriate or natural consequence is?
I think there's 2 kinds of consequences you want to look at. There's natural, which is simply like what's going to happen as a natural result of the behavior. So for instance, your child doesn't want to put on their coat, they get cold. I think of my 16-year-old not doing her laundry. She goes to school with smelly clothes and she's embarrassed. That is a natural consequence. If your child you're having a campfire outside, they get too close to the fire, it hurts their hand. Like, some natural consequences parents are comfortable with and some they aren't. Your child runs too fast, they fall down. They climb too high, it hurts when they hit the ground. Those are natural consequences. The other kind of consequence is a logical consequence. So often what parents do is they go right to the heart of the child and they punish by taking something away that's going to hurt the child. Usually it's like a device or something, or the TV, but it's got nothing to do with the misbehavior. They're not related at all. So an example of a logical consequence would be your child broke your TV remote. They have to use their allowance to pay for the TV remote. They hurt their siblings' feelings. They have to apologize. They write a letter, or they have to, give a verbal apology. If they, I don't know, what's another one, Tan? Like, a logical consequence would be, like they sneak the iPad. They don't get iPad. That literally happened to me 2 days ago. Like, my kid snuck. I'm like, well, guess what? Like, it's gone for today, but they snuck the iPad. So the iPad is the logical consequence. It's related.
Yeah. So they always have to be related, reasonable, and respectful. And so often we see parents say, that's your Xbox, gone for the next 6 months, which no parent actually wants, because we're not going to be able to follow through. So we want to make sure that we don't just take the cell phone away for every single infraction. It has to be related, it has to be reasonable in length, and it also has to be respectful of the whole connection process with the child.
Interesting. That makes, because I have absolutely been that mum that's like, all right, no game time. Like, that's it. It's just not but it's not related at all to their devices or having game time or whatever that is. But because I know that's the thing they value most or care about the most, talk about the most. And it's like, well, I feel, not because I feel like it's going to hurt them, but because I feel like it's going to have impact. But what you're saying is because it doesn't correlate with what their action was. So it doesn't teach them any lesson at all.
Right. And it's also, we have to say, we don't think of it that way, but we choose it because it hurts the most, because they love it the most. So we're using something they value very much against them to get our way. It's coercion. So it's just saying, like, I don't think we would be okay with this within adult relationships if we did this sort of thing.
No, I
Right.
wouldn't. I would leave Brian in a heartbeat if he did that to me.
Right? It's like, I don't like the way you talk to me, so you can't go to the basketball game with your buddies tonight. Like, which has nothing, like, you're like, what? Like, no, it's versus like, we need to talk about this. Like, we have to have a discussion about respectful, like, language in our marriage. Like, they have nothing to do with the other thing. And what did that teach your child? It taught them absolutely nothing about how to behave. It taught them no skills whatsoever. It's not so much about the consequences, like, what do they do instead? That's the discipline. Discipline means to teach. So if you've just hurt your child, being like, I'm taking away the thing you love the most to kind of hurt you so you don't do the thing again, okay, maybe they will avoid the behavior. Absolutely, because they love that thing so much. Have they learned anything about what to do instead? Have they gained any skills from your problem-solving abilities to navigate that situation next time? Do they know how to have a discussion with their brother? Do they know how to share? Do they know how to solve some conflict? We haven't taught them anything. So we're like, don't do that, but we have not taught them what to do either.
Right. That's so very true.
I have some friends who I know might hear this and say, I get it. Like, connection rather than coercion. And I want the best for my child. I want to connect with them. But I'm doing the best that I can. I just feel that I'm on empty. And then I could see the tear. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. Life is moving too fast. Where does someone even start with this?
Yeah. And it's Dr. Dan Siegel always says it's not necessarily about your own childhood and how that's impacted how you parent now. It's about the degree of reflection you've done about your parenting practices, about where some of your discipline strategies come from. So if a parent is saying, where do I even start? First of all, give yourself lots of compassion. Tammy and I teach and live and breathe this stuff, and we mess up daily ourselves. So give yourselves lots and lots of space, and then start going. What happened for me as a child? What do I want to do a little bit differently? And then we just start with small little shifts. It doesn't have to change overnight. It's just about taking that breath, really kind of breathing into your heart and going, what needs to happen in this moment? And we may still mess that moment up, but it just starts with saying, I'm going to try one tiny little thing different next time that there's a crisis at home.
I was going to say, Circle Security is a really big organization out of they're international. I think they're based out of the US. So anyway, they do all this research on parenting. And they say very specifically, and this came from some very specific research studies, that you only have to parent well about 30% of the time for your kid to turn out okay. It's only 30%. So the other 70% you're going to screw up. And we're not saying to beat your children the other 70% of the time, but you're going to miss them. You're going to miscommunicate. You're going to yell. You're going to like, I messed up and I said the wrong thing. But if you can do the dance of parenting really well about 30% of the time, your kids usually turn out just fine.
That feels achievable.
I always give the parents that stat, because they're like, I have to be good 100% of the time. I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't. Like, you're going to be just fine. But can you, the other 30%?
I was going to go ahead and make it personal about me and things going on in my household, because this morning, very raw and in the moment of me feeling overwhelmed and like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know the right course of action. I don't know how to get the results. Like, I don't know how to change this. So it was a chaotic morning, multiple kids going to different camps and a 2-year-old getting ready for a swim lesson. Like, we're in it. And thankfully my mum was there to help me. So it wasn't just me. Brian's away. And Bodhi, my 10-year-old, was helping with Zane. He's amazing. But he's amazing with Zane. And he was trying to stop Zane from doing something that he shouldn't do. And Zane wasn't listening. No, not listening. And so Bodhi picks him up to take him away from that moment, because he was in around a bunch of cords and Bodhi didn't feel it was safe. He did the right thing. And Zane, out of nowhere, turns around and bites Bodhi on his cheek so hard that it breaks skin. And this is Bodhi, who he has some middle child stuff going on. He even when he was born, the one that's older than him was a little physical with him. So there's trauma from that for him. So now he's feeling like even the baby is beating him up. And I also want to redirect Zane's behavior, but my reaction was very much like a no, Zane, you cannot do this. And I went to Bodhi and I was hugging him and he was sobbing. And I was hugging him just like, I don't know where to begin with this to make sure Bodhi feels okay and loved and seen and not like he's being beat up again, and to redirect Zane's behavior. And it was just so overwhelming as a mum. The biting and hitting at this 2-year-old stage is really intense, and I don't know how to redirect it.
Yeah, so especially with a 2-year-old, we're still working with a highly underdeveloped brain. So we're still working very much with that back part of the brain. It's also very physical still. And he's still learning, what can my body do? What can my body not do? And so in these moments, I always find, I had a biter, actually. My second child was a complete biter. And I just had to have, I almost call it a broken telephone, what I would say to her so that I wouldn't get mad. So I would just say, biting hurts, soft lips, biting hurts. So instead of saying no biting to alarm her, because I want to yell, no biting, stop, I would just come in always with the same words, biting hurts, or with her hands. I would hold her hands too. She was a feisty one. She still is. I would hold her hands and say, gentle hands, gentle hands, gentle hands, again and again and again. And I was very physical. I used my whole body with her instead of talking to her from far away. I'd come up really close and just show her what I was needing and show her with her lips, soft hands.
She's two. She wouldn't understand consequences anyway. Like, they're too little. All you're doing is, you're stopping the biting right there and saying this is not okay. And you're gentle about it because we know, like, they're just in a fight response because they're stressed and someone picked them up and they weren't wanting that. And they something probably felt very intrusive. And so we're just reminding them this isn't okay. And that is the discipline right there. You're saying this isn't appropriate. And you have to do that with lots of behaviors with kids. This isn't appropriate. And we remove them from the situation. I always apply, like, set the limit. Then I apply first aid to whoever's melting down the most. But then we have to go in and do the first aid with the other ones too. Like, we can't just do it with one and ignore the other one. But you can acknowledge, like, maybe like, oh, you're so frustrated. Like, I don't know, Tan did that. Like, it worked for my son when he would bite or kick or anything like that. I would say, like, I hold his hands, like, you may not bite me, or you may not, something simple. But it's like, you're so mad at mom right now. Like, you're so frustrated. And then the tears come and it softens. So we're out of the fight into like this downshift down where he's just overwhelmed, right? Yeah. And then, like, for me is, I don't Tan for you, but it's like, it's probably a good idea. This kiddo just needs a little bit away from this chaos, like, just to remove, you can go to the steps or the bedroom or the couch until they can calm their body down. And then even if it's just 5 minutes where you can just sit with them until their body's calm, and then off we go. But like, at that point, they are out of control with their bodies and they need you, an adult, someone in there to help, like, bring the response down, that fight response down.
I was chatting about this with my mum this morning after they were all at their things. And I was like, I felt like he needed a timeout. My mum took him for a timeout and she had him on her and he was regulating on her. Like, and we do breathing exercises. He copies us. It's amazing. But then I had this thought of like, oh man, is that the wrong thing? Because then he's going to think that this behavior earns him one-on-one time. No, everyone shook their heads simultaneously. It was a big no. Okay, that's comforting because I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to just be there and take him away. And like, I know he's frustrated, but then I thought, am I enforcing this behavior?
Right. That fear is that I'm gonna keep reinforcing this by.
But that's the problem, is he's in fear. That was the whole issue, is he was in fear. And the only way, and what you did was a time in, by the way, not a timeout. So any parents listening, a time in is where you go with the child to co-regulate them. A timeout is when you isolate them. You did the right thing, where beautifully is like, this little one feels scared because the brother picked him up. He wasn't ready. So he's ready to fight because he's overwhelmed for a variety of reasons. And the only way to calm a nervous system that is in a fearful state, overwhelm is fear at the base of the brain, is by physical comfort. That's how all humans are comforted. Even adults are comforted that way. That's why you sit with a therapist, like, close to the couch. Like, there is something about being in proximity to someone you care about or who sees you that calms our nervous system down. And then it's like, oh, we were designed to do this dance. in like within like that close physical relationship with someone, you've already said no to the biting. And now it's saying, but I see you're overwhelmed and you need comfort, so you can now be regulated so you don't keep engaging in that behavior.
Yeah. And, I think so often we have this instinctive knowing, like you said, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted him to be taken away and to like regulate, but I also thought something else should happen. And I think because of kind of pop psychology, we've been educated out of our instinct, which is I want this child to be close to me. I want to help keep them safe. But really what we've been told over the last decade is put that child on the step and let them sit there. If they're 2, let them sit there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. When really what we know is that when children are stressed, they have no access to their thinking brain, to their reflective brain. They're not sitting there going, next time I shouldn't bite my brother. That's not happening at all. They're just sitting there alone, scared, and if they're smarter and a little bit older, going, how do I get out of this timeout? Nothing's happening in that timeout.
I feel like this is training for parents and for adults too, because when someone is screaming or something happens like a bite or a hit, it feels like, if I'm just talking about myself, I start to feel this rise and the energy rise. And then at some point, I want it to stop because I'm uncomfortable with that feeling. So they're dysregulated. I become dysregulated. And now everyone's dysregulated. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it stop as quickly as possible. So I'm exerting some sort of control, whether that's yelling or whether that's timeout to go away, or a pattern that I'm just repeating from my childhood that is way back there. And I'm like, so it's going to be different than my upbringing. And yet that pattern tends to come forth and you see it come out. And then there's the feeling bad afterwards and all of that. I mean, is that a pretty...
I think so. And I'll give you this example. Yesterday, I found out my 10-year-old. Okay, so my kids do their own laundry, right? And like context here, my parents were yellers and shamers. Like, let me just feel as horrible, like make you feel as bad as I can with my hands or my words or like screaming. So my default, trust me, is to want to shame and yell. Like inside, that's how it feels. And I'm very cognizant of this, like, because I've done a lot of therapy. So I'm like, I can feel it come up. And my 10-year-old yesterday had been hiding her laundry. So she tells me she does her laundry. And what she'd been doing is just dumping her clean clothes in her closet. So there was a pile, I'm not kidding you, 3 feet tall. And I walked in there, and I grew up in a very German home that you did not make messes. And I was like, I need to walk away right now. Like, there is nothing constructive that is going to come out of my mouth right now. I looked at her, I'm like, we need to fix this, but I can't talk to you right now. Like, I need to go. And I went for a walk, and I was like, I knew nothing good was coming out of this moment. Nothing. It was... And no, so she caught it for sure. But at that moment, so sometimes when you feel that, you're aware of it, right? You're like, I'm very uncomfortable. And I know if I stay here, I'm going to scream or I'm going to accost my child or shame them. And no, I don't like leaving them alone, their feelings, but trust me, that is the better option, to walk away, come back, and then do some co-regulation. Then we talk about how we're going to fix it. But it was a big one yesterday where I was like, I just need to like not be here right now. And we came back and we sorted it out. But it's okay, parents, to walk away if you can feel that anger or rage, because like we want to be just like our parents and we want to spank or hit or just be like, make it stop. We're really uncomfortable, because you weren't allowed to do that when you were little. And yeah, like, so coming from an expert, literally, I couldn't even sit in the room with my daughter yesterday because I was so dysregulated. And I was like, I just got to walk away sometimes. And then you come back and you can fix it later. It's okay. Like, you can come back and repair and say, I'm really sorry, but I was having really big feelings and I was just really frustrated. But like, let's figure out how to do this better. That's okay. Take that and just run with it. You already made a shift in a whole generation of raising kids by not yelling in that moment, choosing to walk away and come back. You've shifted the next gen for when your kids have kids by not yelling or hitting. And that's a win. Just freaking take it. It's a win.
That's beautiful, that right there.
I hope everyone hears that.
Yeah,
one. That's a big
right
one.
there.
The 30% is big. You have to do
big.
it well, 30%, so that takes a lot of the pressure off. And just stepping away to regulate yourself is actually, in the long run, better and shifts the next generation. Like, that feels purposeful.
Yeah,
that feels good.
That feels really good.
Right? One of the biggest ahas I had, and I don't always do this, of course, but when I can start to see it from their point of view, when I can see, my daughter now, I have two, 11 and 13, and sometimes I have my reaction of something that she wants to do that I don't agree with or I don't get. But when I can put myself in her position and understand what was it like at that age,
Yeah.
and how big does this feel and why is this important? When I can start to understand that, or even when they were little, I'm not super reactive. I would say I'm a pretty patient person, but sometimes all the things are going on. We have to get to school and, no one's ready, and just going, okay, wait a second. What is the worst thing that can happen in this moment? What does it feel like for them? What's most important? And just asking some of those questions and being able to see it from their perspective was sort of enough for me to pull back and get back in my body and go, okay, I see it. In the long run, being 5 minutes late, yes, I don't want to teach that, but being 5 minutes late and having everything be okay is going to be better than the shit show that might happen if we don't do that.
Right. Yeah. Of
Absolutely.
course.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. I've learned that in my parenting journey too, is just to slow things down. So often I'm moving so quickly. And it's just like, Tanya, just take a breath here. What's important? And I love that, stepping into their shoes, but we cannot do that when we're moving really fast all of the time.
And what I really loved about that, and I heard in that moment, is you can actually say, now you can't say this to a 5-year-old, but when you have tweens, like kids 10 and up, you can literally pause in those moments and say to your tween, your teen, help me understand where you're coming from. Can you explain that to me? Why is this important to you? I just want to understand where you're coming from. That is huge for them. They want a voice at this age in their development. It's so important that they feel heard and seen, and you are willing to say your opinion. It's okay. Your opinion is different than mine, and we can see things differently. And parents sometimes are like, oh, I was just like you when I was young, blah, blah, blah. And you're not they're not the same person. So you'll get quite far with teens and tweens when you just say, help me understand why this is important. Help me see your side of things. Can you explain that to me? Because I'm having a hard time here, and I just need you to break this down for me. And then you can have a conversation about this. That might help parents who can't see it from their point of view. Just ask them what their point of view is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Simple and such a good reminder, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Just ask. I heard you talk about laundry, and you said
your kids do their own laundry? Tell me more. Teach me your ways. My goodness. I have 4 kids at home. That's a lot of laundry.
No, they've been doing their laundry since they're about 4 or 5. So they obviously don't, the older ones wash.
Did you say 4? This is very okay. No, for real. How do you teach a 4-year-old how to do laundry?
You do it with them. You have to do it with them, but you train them. I grew up in a farming family, so I was rural, and kids help from the time they're very, very young. They help cook meals, they do laundry, they do dishes, from very, very, very young. So 18 months, my kids were doing chores. So I think that's just they're involved in every aspect of our house, every aspect, from cooking to cleaning toilets to washing windows, cleaning the yard up, picking up after the dog, You start them young. That's the key. 18 months.
I have a question for you. I have a 2-year-old that we spoke about, and I would love to implement this. This kid loves cleaning. He has a toy Dyson. So I feel like we're good there. We'll be able to do some stuff. And especially, Tammy, yourself being in a blended family. And I have inherited these beautiful kids. I love them. We have amazing relationship. But I've been around for 4 years, and there are certainly things that I would love to teach, structures I'd love to put in our home, boundaries I'd like to set, that has not been a part of their upbringing. How do I teach them it's time to do laundry? Because to be honest, they've been very lucky kids, just like I was. I was an only. My laundry was done until I moved out at 16. I was like, what you mean it doesn't wash itself? It was a learning curve. But for these kids, I would love to implement the idea of chores and getting them excited about that, because I think that's understanding work ethic. But I don't want to be the evil stepmom that's wash the floors. So how do you start to introduce these things?
Yeah, I introduced this when my stepdaughters were 10 and 5. So I came in they hadn't been okay. So what was important about this was whenever we got them doing any chores, it was always done as a family. It was never done on their own. They'll never do it if they're, it's always been done that way. So it's funny when my kids do laundry, our whole living room is covered in baskets of clothes and we all fold together. It is done as a family affair. So it's the same with cooking. It is done as a family. If we are cleaning the house, the whole family's cleaning the house. If we're in the yard doing yard work, all the kids are in the yard. And it falls apart if the parents aren't, like, it falls apart if I am not there or my husband's there. Like, it has to be almost a family affair. And you can be doing different things as long as everybody's kind of in working motion, because then it becomes about about the culture of your family, that this is what we do as a family. It is not my house, it is your house too. And this family, I always tell my kids, the family would fall apart if we didn't all help. That is very, very clear. And so it's just something that it's communal. And then kids will buy in if it's communal. I'll tell you that. But the second I have them doing it, it doesn't work well when I'm like, go do your laundry. If one of the kids was sick and they didn't, it's a fight. But if we all do it at the same time, it's harmonious. Like, yeah, that's how I did it. It's like anything is always done as a family. And here's the thing you can tell your kids is the internet, the TV, the iPad, whatever they have, those are luxuries. And what's a necessity is that this house works, that we get food on the table, that we take care of our belongings. And so to me, it's like when we are all done our chores as a family, when the laundry is done, then you guys can have this lovely thing that you don't actually need. It's a luxury, but you like. And so that's one of the things that I really highlight, that this is a luxury, but us taking care of this home is not. This is a necessity for our family, or this would fall apart. And so it's like that's the narrative, and you have to really stick to that narrative. And kids are better when it's collective. Like, it's about it's about our family, not about them and their chores. It's about our chores and what we do as a family together.
I love this so much, and for many reasons, but something that also just came to mind is, these kids, my kids, all of them, they're growing up with a whole lot more than I grew up with, right? I had chores, I had things, we worked very hard as a family for me to be able to do the things that I did. These kids will want for nothing. And I love that we can provide that for them, but I also don't want them to grow up being spoiled and not understand what it takes to work and earn and what a luxury is. Because, girl, I had to put two of my kids on the bus this morning to go to camp, and they were like, oh, the bus. I was like, the bus? What do you mean?
Right.
Like, they're not getting chauffeured to camp. Like, you'll be on the bus every time now from this moment forward. And so I really want to implement these things, because I think for their personal growth, it's not about getting stuff done in the house and having help with laundry. For me, this is about their life skills as being human beings out in the world, being able to communicate and function. This is so important.
Yeah, I would love for you to explain this, because I know one of the things that you talked about was, not only is it important, but it's necessary for children, even children who come from wealthier backgrounds and who have a lot, that it's necessary for them to know what it's like to help out, to have responsibilities. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things happening there. We know that kids who partake in chores tend to experience over the lifespan a higher feeling of competency in their world, because they know, I can cook, I can do the laundry. So even though we have children who perhaps have everything but never have to do anything, by the time they reach adulthood, they don't have that same deep sense of competency. So it's about competency, and then it's also about cooperation. How do we work together? How do we navigate when I feel like one person's doing more than the other, or that I think that this isn't fair? Those are all life skills that come into doing chores together as a family.
And it also, I think, gender roles too, and trying to eradicate this. Like, we hear so many moms say, like, they carry the load of their family. And as a mom of a boy, I never want that for my son to put on his spouse. Like, there aren't these pink jobs, blue jobs. I was like, no. Like, we all help with all aspects of this, because this is how we support one another. And it's not fair for any of this to fall on just one person. And so I think of it that way too, is breaking kind of some of these generational pieces, these sexist pieces of being like, no, that's not how we do things. We have to support one another, and that means everybody's in on all of this stuff. Like, we all are helping out with everything. And of course, some people have gifts, they're better at things than other things. Like, I can't fix the car, my husband can. Like, there are limits here, but still, That's what I hope as raising a son, that he will never be in a position when if he decides to get married one day, that let's say he marries a girl, his wife is like, oh no, you honey, you do all the cooking, you do all the cleaning plus the child rearing. I was like, oh no, that is not going to be my kid. Like, he knows he is an active participant in the family culture.
Yeah, that's really important to me too. Like, I'm raising multiple boys, and I really want to raise good men, how to respect women, to not believe that these things are a gender thing, to cook, to clean, to take care of a baby, like that, to wipe that idea. I'm not saying the right words, but to do exactly what you said, to raise him to have a completely different idea of what gender roles are, or to just not have an idea of it at all, but to just be willing. Oh my God, we're going to have to edit out my stuttering. To be a willing participant and partner in everything that it takes to live a life with each other. That's so important to me.
Yeah.
Multiple boys in the house. It's a lot. There's a lot of testosterone in my house right now, guys. Woo! It's a lot. And we're in preteen status, and it's intense. It's just things.
So what would be something that, when we talk so much about kids, we've talked about what we can do to
Consequences, boundaries.
help out, but you had mentioned earlier about behaviors and children's behaviors. What is something that would be great for us to know, when there are behaviors that are happening? How do we handle certain scenarios?
Mm-hmm. So I think a little bit more broadly, just to always remember that all behavior is communication. Their behavior is always telling us something. So be curious. What's going on here? So, if they're having massive meltdowns at the end of the day, this is where we become curious and we go, what's happened today? What happened for them? How connected were we? How many transitions did they have? Did they have too many activities? Were they on their iPad for too long? Always go back to asking questions. When we're curious, that's when things start to shift a little bit.
In our book, we talk about, there's 3 questions the brain asks, and we're not going to get into the neurology behind this. But the first question the brain always asks is, do I feel safe? And so what we can think of safety as being like, is your child tired? Have they had too many transitions, too much screen time, not enough play and movement? Safety is like, does my body feel good? It's not just like psychological safety, like, is my parent scary? Being safe in your body means like, do I feel good in my body? And kids are very vulnerable. So when they feel overwhelmed by too much sound, too many smells, too many transitions, too much screen time, not enough, and they don't get enough movement to get rid of these stress hormones, they don't feel good in their body, so they don't feel safe. So that's like the first question we ask, like, at the base level, how, have they eaten too much caffeine, had chocolate and are like hyped up on caffeine today, too much sugar, like that. Also their diet's is going to affect that too. So the baseline, like, physiologically, how is my child feeling? Because there's lots of things would contribute to a child not feeling good in their body that can lead to misbehavior, that like usually big feelings. And then the second question the brain asks is, do I feel loved and connected? Because we are safe when we are with someone we love. They'll protect us then. So at the end of the day, if their cups are empty, if kids feel invisible, they feel like you favor one child over the other, they don't feel good enough, again, that is also going to cause a lot of stress for that child, because if we don't love them, we won't protect them. So that is like a biological drive for kids. If they don't feel loved, we won't keep them safe. So they need that, and the brain thrives off of connection and attachment. And kind of the last question the brain asks is do I feel competent? Like, so at the end of the day, when kids' self-esteem isn't great, or they feel they can't handle a situation or a task, they're probably lacking a skill set that needs to be taught. So those are kind of like, as a parent, I'm always navigating my parenting, asking those 3 questions. Like, is misbehavior or big feelings, which often leads to misbehavior, coming from one of those 3 things? Do they feel safe? Does something going on physiologically for my kid? Is their cup empty? End of the day, that's what I say, is the cup empty for whatever reason? And then third is being like, do they lack the skills to handle this situation? They simply just don't have them yet. And so they're doing the best they can, but like, they don't know how to handle anger. They don't know how to handle getting along with the neighbor kid yet. They're upset about something and they don't have the skills to be like, how to communicate maybe verbally, or to come tell someone. Like, they just don't know what to do. So I would really break it down like in our book, those are the questions we show, and we show what parts of the brain navigate those 3 questions.
I really want to get back to your book in a second because I want to know more about it. But you said something that sparked a thought for me. So making it all about me. I have multiple kids. So when you talk about keeping their cup full, right? But you have only so much time in the day where you can fill those cups for each of them. What is the best way to approach? Because I think this is so relatable for so many people. Many families have multiple kids and working parents, and you feel the guilt constantly of not being able to give your kids enough. So what is the most efficient way? What are some things that you can do with your kids to truly fill their cup if you don't have enormous amounts of time?
Yeah, and we know that it's quality time over quantity time. So if you have multiple kids in a household, before being Una Maya's mama's a mom to 4 foster kids, so I know what it's like to have a crazy house, lots of kids. A lot of it is about seeing their kids. So really doing that eye contact, getting down on their level and talking to them, not at them. Most of our day is spent talking at kids. So have you done your laundry? Where's your homework? Why haven't you done this? And instead going, hey, can you show me that picture you drew? Or tell me about your dream last night. So talking to them and not just at them. And really it can be short. We don't need to have an hour-long playtime every day. 5 minutes of connection does wonders with kids.
Yeah, we did 10 minutes in our house of something called connection time. And it was anything that they wanted to do for the 10 minutes. It could be a board game, it could be art, it could be anything. You're like, one parent would go with one, we'd go with the other and do connection time. And it was fantastic, the result that happened. Just, you could see their cups being filled up. You could feel the energy change in the house by doing that.
I love that. I think it was you guys that shared this. Forgive me if it wasn't. Something about the most important times of the day to connect with your kids. That was you guys?
Yeah, so if you think at 3 minutes in the morning, so 3 minutes first thing in the morning, it's like that connection. So for instance, I have a song that I have sung to my son since he was a baby first thing in the morning. And he's 8 and I still sing it to him. It's just our thing in the morning. And then we talk about, I might cuddle him. I just cuddle with him. I have my coffee and he climbs in my lap, still at 8. I think I probably have 1 more year of this. I'm just going to hold on to that. And so that's like our routine where he comes and finds me. Because I'm usually up before he is. And then we just do a quick cuddle, like it's like 3 minutes, right? Like you fill the cup first thing in the morning. The next point of 3 minutes of connection is after they've been at daycare or preschool or primary school, like wherever they are, is like, how do we reconnect after being apart for the day? So whatever it is, like that we're apart, is like, maybe it's having a snack together. Maybe it is just talking about their day, having a snuggle on a couch, watching a couple minutes of a show together, like using that in our physical presence if they're cuddly, or going for a walk or whatever that is. And then the other 3 minutes is like the last 3 minutes before they fall into sleep. So for my kiddos, we talk about gratitude. What were they thankful for? What was the best part of their day? What was the hardest part of their day? We just sit in the, we still lay with our youngest 2, the 16-year-old. No, she's not having any of that. But the younger 2, the 10 and the 8, we still lay with them.
You guys have a book, the Parenting Handbook. I am so excited to read it. Tell us a little bit about what people can find in this book. There it is. You have it. Please hold it up so we can see it.
Yeah, right there.
Right there. Yes, I'm so excited to dive into
Handbook.
this.
Yes.
Certainly, I looked at it this morning and I cursed myself for not having read it already because I feel like I would have done things better. But please tell us what we can find in this book.
So we really just wanted a really relatable guidebook for parents, something that parents could pick up even at 9:30 at night when they're exhausted and go, okay, let me learn a little bit. So what we wanted to do was take all of the research and just put it into really concrete, action-orientated steps that parents could go, okay, this is how I work with my kid when they're having a hard moment. This is how I help my kid to be more resilient. This is how I create family rituals. So it really is just a tapestry on how to help your family be the very best family that they can be.
I love that. It's like the Parenting Handbook. They say kids don't come with instruction manuals, but this is kind of like an instruction manual.
Yeah, we really tried, where we broke it down to like discipline. We have a couple chapters, the 3 chapters on discipline. We talk about the brain, like how your child's brain, why it's underdeveloped, and like these are kind of the parts that still need to kind of like, are going to take some time. We talk about the importance of play, like what makes a strong child, like what makes them resilient, how to build family culture. what else? We talk about screen time, sleep. Like we talk about a lot of different things. And it's just how we raised our kids.
Yeah, we had so much fun writing the book together because it really is just everything that Tammy and I believe so deeply in.
That's amazing. And how did you guys connect with each other? Like, how did the Institute of Child Psychology come to be?
We actually did a training. I was right out of grad school and we did a training in play therapy together. We're both registered play therapists too. And I met Tammy at that training and we immediately clicked. We worked in a couple of private agencies together. And then Tammy approached me one day over sushi and said, hey, so what would you think about starting to do workshops with me? Tammy had already done one workshop by herself, and she was like, I think we should do this together. And I was like, okay. And that was the genesis, right over sushi together with our 2 little 1-year-olds running around.
That is amazing.
Yeah, we wanted to help parents. I think that was the why for me and Tan. I think Tan, I hope I'm not just speaking for me, but we had worked with a lot of kids who had a lot of really, deep-seated mental health stuff. And what was the biggest barrier to these kids getting better was the parents usually, not the kids. The kids were great. And I just had hit so many walls with parents. I was so sick of resistant parents being like, fix my kid. And I'm like, I need you to change. Like, I need these things to change at home, that I really wanted for myself to help parents who wanted the help. Like, who wanted to change and wanted to be better. And I'm like, I want to work with those parents and teachers and social workers. And because those are the kids who are going to like do really well long term, is when they've got parents who are conscious, and it doesn't mean they're perfect, but they're conscious, they're aware, they like want to do something different maybe than their parents did, and they're motivated. And those are like, I was like, I want those, or that's what I want to do. Those are the people I want to reach, because like that shifts the entire culture of the world. Not just 1 or 2 kids. If we can get these hundreds of thousands of parents we work with to start shifting, that is going to cause shifts globally. And that was really exciting to me.
Well, thank you for doing the work that you do, for helping children, for helping the parents, because I really do believe that looking at how to be the best parent that you could be is training to how to be the best human that you can be. And really, by giving to others, you can give to yourself. By slowing down, becoming more present, all the things that you talked about, connection, how to connect with your children, which some of my best moments when I can go down on their level and connect with them, I feel more connected. I feel slowed down. So it's such a win-win. Thank you both so much for being with here.
Guys, thank you.
With us today.
It has been such a gift having you here. I would honestly keep you here for 3 hours with all the questions that are just about me and my family. But I know you got stuff to do and you're a busy woman. Please let everyone know that's here with us today where they can find you and where they can purchase your book, how they can, if people can work with you, if they're looking, I don't know if you take clients anymore, but how can people find you?
I mean, we have the Parenting Handbook. You can go on like Amazon, and there's bookstores, but I would go Amazon's easiest way. And then it's the Parenting Handbook, and then you can find us on social media, the Institute of Child Psychology. And if you go to our website, the Institute of Child Psychology, we do have a membership where we have like 100+ courses parents can take on like any subject to do with mental health with kids or parenting. We have like live Q&As with Tania and I where we answer parents' questions. We have webinars for parents and professionals like every 2 weeks where we bring someone really big to talk to them about a subject and ask questions. We have certification, or you can just purchase our courses on our website as well. But the membership's a little bit cheaper for parents, and they can do that as well.
I will be seeing you over there. Sorry, Tania. What were you going to say?
Sharna's like, I'm in.
Part of what Tammy's talking about here too is that for people who love our Instagram, as part of our monthly membership, we also have all of our infographics as principles. We've got scripts on what to say to your child when. So there's lots of concrete tools as part of the membership.
I'm thrilled. Again, excellent. I will see you over there. I will be a part of all of this. And once again, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. It was a gift to have you here, and thank you. And hopefully we can have you on again at some point when my kids are older and I've got more questions about the next stage.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Wow, that was so insightful and helpful. Thank you, everybody that has tuned in and that is listening to this episode. I hope you loved listening to it and being a part of it as much as we did. If you do like watching your podcast, if you want to see that video footage, we offer that now. So make sure you head over to oldishpodcast.com. You will be able to see all the options there of our memberships. And if you are watching us right now, stay tuned for after the show.
Hey, if you're going through something right now, if you need additional support, then please reach out to me at randyspelling.com/help or go to my Instagram at randyspelling.